everyone, so in this video we're looking at decimal numbers, decimal places, some stuff that you would have done early on in secondary school, Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, or even in primary school. But this is really just a recap, and while we're at it, we'll be looking at how some CXC past paper questions with decimal numbers, decimal places, and so on. So here, in front of us here, we have a decimal number, which is 17.591. Now, just listen to how I'm saying this number, 17.591. I'm not saying 17.591. You see, so this is the decimal point right here, right? So you're seeing it here, and the arrow shows that's the decimal point, a dot. So the decimal point is like a dot, right? So after your decimal point, on your left hand side, you have to call out each number separately. So 17.591. Let's get it up here. If I had, let's say, this number here, this is 5.81, not 5.81, right? Just keep that in mind. 5.81. If I had this one here, so this is 0.54. Sorry, my point is looking like that. So 0.54. And let's just look at one more. This is 231.2103, right? So just keep that in mind. So now looking back at our main example here, is 17.591. So we're looking at, let's get the 17 first. So the 7 represents 7 units or 7 ones, right? So the value of the 7 is just 7 ones, right? And the 1 on right here is the tens. So how much does that 1 represent? That represents 10. So let's just write it here. Let's write it as, so actually I could come across here. I'm going to write it coming down like this, right? 0.591. So we just said the 7 is 7 ones, right? Which is just 7, right? And the 1 is represents as tens. So as 1 tenth, which is 10, right? Now let's look, and then here we have the decimal point. Right, decimal point. Let's look at the 5 now. So right after the decimal point, we have tenths with a THS at the end of the 10, right? So that's 5 tenths, TH, don't forget the TH, which really is 5 over 10. Then we have right after, we get hundreds, TH. So that 9 is 9 hundredths. Which is 9 over 100. And then last, but not least in this one, this is 1,000. So 1,000. 1,000th, which is 1 over 1,000. Now, if you look at the pink arrows at the bottom here, when you move to your left, every number gets 10 times bigger. When you move to your right, every number gets 10 times smaller. So more you move on your right after the decimal point, your numbers get smaller. So let's look at something else here now. So what if I had 23 0.058, right? What is the value of, let's say, the 5? What is the value of the 5? Now remember, after decimal point, it's tenths, th, 1 over 10. After that is hundredths. So this 5 here is really 5 over 100. Now, sometimes you might forget this, right? And I'm just going to try and show an easy way to remember the place value really. So let's look at it here. So an easy way for me and for some students to remember, you see where your decimal point is? Put a 1 underneath it, right? And after every number, after the decimal point, add a 0. So you see how this shows like for the 5. The 5 will stop right here, right? So that's 5 over 100. The value of the 8, the 8 stops right here, right? So that'll be 8 over 1000, right? Well, the 0 has no value, right? 0 over 100, that's nothing, right? So let's look at another one. Let's look at 5.81, the one we wrote at the top there, right? So again, I'm just showing you with the method I just showed you here, we're adding the 1, right? Put a 1 under the decimal point, add zeros under each number after the decimal point. So the value of the 8 is 8 over 100. The value of the 1 is 1. Okay, mistake I made here. So what is the mistake? Before I change, I said the value of the 8 is 8 over 100. But no, the 8 it stops here, right? So this really is supposed to be 10, right? So let's just erase that little error I made there. And it's okay to make errors. Nothing is wrong with making an error, right? Right, so the value of the 8 is 8 over 10. The value of the 1, however, so the 1 is all of this here, right? So that's 1 over 100, right? Very simple. I'm going to show you two questions in particular in the next piece, where these are CSEC multiple choice questions, where they ask you how to the value of certain numbers, right? In decimal numbers in particular. All right, so these are the CSEC value questions. I'm just going to label this one number 1, number 2. These two questions are from two separate CSEC past paper questions. I think the first one is from June 2017, and number 2 is from another one, right? So let's look at the first one. What is the value of the digit 2 in the number 48.621? So I want to know the value of this here, that 2 there, right? So 48.621. So remember I told you put a 1 under the decimal point and add zeros under every other number. So under the 2, right, was really stopping here, right? So the value of the 2 is 2 over 100, which is option E. Again, you don't need to do it this way by putting the 1 under the decimal point and the zeros afterward. Some people could look at it and know that, okay, the 6 represents 6 tenths, 6 over 10. So the 2 is 2 over 100. The 1 is 1 over 1000, right? But again, this method, putting the 1 under the decimal point and adding zeros afterwards, is pretty easy for most people. Let's look at number 2. Now, number 2, the value of the digit 5 in the number 537 is, and we have 4 options here. Now, 537 is not, there's no decimal, seen any decimal point, right? So we're just looking at 537. Now, looking back at what we looked at initially, the first number represents the ones, right? 7 ones. The second one is 3 tens. So that's 30. That represents 30. And 5 is 500s. 500, right? Remember, when you have as you move to your right, the numbers get bigger, times 10, right? So just remember that. But this one is pretty easy, right? Everybody should know this one. So, right, I just wanted to highlight these two particular questions. Very easy questions that come in CXC multiple choice question past papers. And in our next video, we will look at identifying different decimal places and rounding off decimal numbers and so on.